Right bracket chapter 6. The Missouri Miscarriage. I received, by a heavenly vision, a commandment in June following, to take my journey to the western boundaries of the state of Missouri, and there designate the very spot which was to be the central place for the commencement of the gathering together of those who embrace the fullness of the everlasting gospel. Joseph Smith TPJS, page 79. While the saints in Kirtland were attempting to live a united order, the Lord gave a revelation concerning a land of promise, which would have no curse when the Lord cometh. The place had not been revealed, but if they would gather to Ohio, they would be informed of this Zion. Later, it was revealed that the New Jerusalem or Holy City, the capital of the government of God, would be located in Jackson County, Missouri. The Lord also revealed that this Zion could not be established, except by obedience to the law of consecration. Another united order was attempted in Missouri, and the prophet dedicated the site for the Temple of the New Jerusalem at Independence. CD&C 58:61-64. Right bracket The saints began to move en masse into Missouri, and was purchased for $1.25 an acre. Many began consecrating their property to receive their stewardship. Here the city of Zion should be built. Not only was it the site for the gathering, it is also revealed as the location of the Garden of Eden. Indeed, the doctrine teaches that God has been especially solicitous of this land, keeping it as an inheritance for the chosen. Nationalism is further expressed in their assumption of the role of Israel. They identified themselves literally with ancient Israel and therefore became the chosen people who were to inherit the chosen land. The Mormon Village, Nelson, page 34. Joseph Smith quoted the prophet Enoch, which was actually a prophecy of the Lord. To gather out mine own elect from the four quarters of the earth, unto a place which I shall prepare, a holy city. And it shall be called Zion, a New Jerusalem. TPJS, page 84. The city of Zion was built according to a specific plan. The plan provided that all the people should live in the city, that the city should be a mile square, that the blocks should contain 10 acres, cut into half-acre lots, allowing 20 houses to the block, that the streets should be 8 rods wide and intersect right bracket each other at right angles, and run north and south and east and west. That the middle tier of blocks should be 50% wider than the others. 3 of these were to be used for schools, churches, and public buildings, that stables and barns should be outside the city, that farmlands should be laid off north and south of the city, that no lot should contain more than 1 house, that all houses should be set back 25 feet from the street, and some other specifications. Several towns were laid out according to this plan, with certain modifications, in the Middle West including Kirtland, Ohio, 1834, Far West, 1836, and Adamonte in Missouri, and Norvo, Illinois, 1837. The plan of the city of Zion thus became the foundation for the settlements of the Mormons in the Great Basin, Salt Lake City being the first village established, in 1847. The Mormon Village, Nelson, page 38. At first the law of consecration was generally accepted by the saints in Missouri. Land was cheap, and the Lord instructed them to purchase the whole region of country, as soon as time would permit, and then added that, behold, here is wisdom. Let them do this lest they receive none inheritance, save it be by the shedding of blood. D&C 58:52-53. The Apostle Orson Pratt said that it would appear from this, that unless the whole region should be purchased by the saints, they were to receive none inheritance there, and at the same time intimation was given, that unless the saints were faithful and expeditious to do this, there would be a shedding of blood. The New Jerusalem, Pratt, page 16. With land so cheap, and with so many Mormons moving onto the land, making it more valuable, many of the saints took advantage of the old Gentile philosophy to buy cheap and sell high. They were motivated by the temporal profit rather than gaining an eternal inheritance. The Lord saw this and warned them that the rebellious shall be cut off out of the land of Zion, and shall be sent away, and shall not inherit the land. D&C 64:35, because he decreed that my law shall be kept on this land. D&C 58:19. The prophet Joseph Smith wrote a letter to the saints in Missouri, and warned them also that if Zion will not purify herself, so as to be approved of in all things, in his sight, he will seek another people, for his work will go on until Israel is gathered, and they who will not hear his voice, must expect to feel his wrath. DHC 1:316. All of this was given as warning to the saints at a time when everything was peaceful in Jackson County, Missouri. The saints were greedy after the temporal things. And within 2.5 years of their settling in the land of Zion, the words of these prophecies were fulfilled. Since the saints failed to keep the law of united order, they suffered the consequences. The Apostle Orson Pratt explained what happened. Did the people carry out this law? Why? Because they had imbibed the notions which had prevailed among the people of the whole earth, and these notions were in direct opposition to the order of heaven. The notions and traditions of the world were that every man must be for himself, every family for themselves, and they must labor with their might, mind and strength to gain all they possibly could gain, and use only for themselves and their generations after them, caring nothing at all about their neighbors. These traditions had been instilled into our minds, and we were too full of covetousness and of false notions about property to carry out the law of God, and hence many, when they came up to Zion, looked abroad upon that beautiful rich soil, and the excellent groves of timber, and the fine prairies and meadows, with springs breaking forth in numerous places, as they do in Jackson County. And their souls lusted after these things, and the rich man said, "No, I will not consecrate all my property, I will go to the general land office and purchase for myself, and I will buy largely in order that I may sell to my poor brethren when they come up here. I will buy land and speculate upon it, and make my fortune." That was the feeling which existed in the hearts of some of the latter-day saints. JD 16:5. It would have been well for the saints to have considered the admonition of Paul, who said, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment let us be therewith content." Tim 6:7-8. The Lord continued to chastise the saints for their selfishness and inequality, and in the summer of 1834 he said, "Behold, they have not learned to be obedient to the things which I required at their hands, but are full of all manner of evil, and do not impart of their substance, as becometh saints, to the poor and afflicted among them, and are not united according to the union required by the law of the celestial kingdom." D&C 105:3-4. When the saints left Independence and went about 50 miles north to settle far west, it was their third attempt to live the united order. This was in 1837, and they were buying up land to again become a Zion, according to the law of the Lord. Some formed united order cooperatives called united firms. Some of the agricultural orders were called Western Agricultural Company, the Eastern Agricultural Company, and the Southern Agricultural Company. These farming companies would enclose about 7,000 acres of land, 12 sections, and put them into grain. 3 other corporations were organized to unite other industries with the united effort. United firms consolidated property holdings and became business companies among the saints. From the journal history of the church, the following glowing prospect was anticipated. All kinds of necessary articles will soon be manufactured by these firms, that we may be under no necessity of purchasing of our enemies. Any surplus that may remain after paying the demands of the firm is to be divided according to the needs and wants to each family, annually or oftener if needed. The operation of these firms enables a man to get a comfortable house in a very few days, when he gets about it, first by working for the firm 70 or 80 days, then the firm turns out stone cutters, teams, carpenters, masons, etc., to complete the house, and nearly everything is paid for by the man's own labor. Arrangements will soon be made that a person can get every necessity to eat, drink, live in, and to wear, at the storehouse of the firms, and the best part of it all is that they want no better pay than labor. Arrangements are making that no person shall have the excuse for not laboring, nothing to do, nor shall the idle eat the bread of industry. Journal History, November 19, 1838. Although such noble efforts were to be commended, there still arose troubles from within and from without. John Cottrell wrote, "Every man was to put in all his property by leasing it to the firm for a term of years. Overseers or managers were to be chosen from time to time by the members of the firm to manage the concerns of the same, and the rest were to labor under their direction." Many joined these firms, while many others were much dissatisfied with them, which caused considerable feeling and excitement in the church. A Brief History, John Cottrell, page 46. The saints were their own worst enemy. Because of their own weaknesses and faults, the Lord allowed them to suffer the persecution and plundering that resulted in Missouri. Elder George A. Smith reported, "The settlements in Jackson County were commenced on the principle of the law of consecration. There were, however, at that period, professed Latter-day Saints, who did not see proper to abide by this law of consecration. They thought it was their privilege to look after number one, and some of them, believing that Zion was to become a very great city, and that being the center stake of it, they purchased tracts of land in the vicinity, with the intention of keeping them until Zion became the beauty and joy of the whole earth, when they thought they could sell their lands and make themselves very rich. It was probably owing to this, in part, that the Lord suffered the enemies of Zion to rise against her. J.D. 1759. The MISCARRIAGE rose up against the Mormons and burned out 203 Mormon homes, and burned or destroyed many granaries and grain fields. They ripped out fences, tore down their printing office and other businesses, whipped, beat and raped the Mormons. Over $318,000 had been paid for land in Missouri, but all of it was lost to the mobs. George A. Smith concluded his explanation for the reason that such things occurred. We have been gathered from many nations, and we have brought many notions and traditions with us, and it has seemed that with those notions and traditions we could not dispense. J.D. 17:60. The Lord would not allow the saints to have that land if they possessed such Gentile feelings in their hearts. The prophet Joseph Smith gave a speech at Far West, which was not only a warning to the saints then, but a prophetic warning to the saints in our day. Brethren, we are gathered to this beautiful land to build up Zion. But since I have been here I have perceived the spirit of selfishness. Covetousness exists in the hearts of the saints. Here are those beginning to spread out, buying up all the land they are able to thinking to lay a foundation for themselves, only looking to their individual families. Now I want to tell you that Zion cannot be built up in such a way. I see signs put out, beer signs, speculative schemes are being introduced. This is the way of the world, Babylon indeed, and I tell you in the name of the God of Israel, if there is not repentance. You will be broken and scattered from this land. Edward Stevenson Autobiography, page 40. The saints were not all willing to consecrate, indeed only a few were. Brigham Young, with his sardonic wit, explained the general character of many saints at this time. When the revelation which I have read was given in 1838, I was present, and recollect the feelings of the brethren. A number of revelations were given on the same day. The brethren wished me to go among the churches, and find out what surplus property the people had, with which to forward the building of the temple we were commencing at Far West. I accordingly went from place to place through the country. Before I started, I asked Brother Joseph, who shall be the judge of what is surplus property? Said he, let them be the judges themselves, for I care not if they do not give a single dime. So far as I am concerned, I do not want anything they have. Then I replied, I will go and ask them for their surplus property, and I did so. I found the people said they were willing to do about as they were counseled, but, upon asking them about the surplus property, most of the men who owned land and cattle would say, I have got so many 100 acres of land, and I have got so many boys, and I want each one of them to have 80 acres. Therefore this is not surplus property. Again, I have got so many girls, and I do not believe I shall be able to give them more than 40 acres each. Well, you have got 200 or 300 acres left. Yes, but I have a brother-in-law coming on, and he will depend on me for a living. My wife's nephew is also coming on, he is poor, and I shall have to furnish him a farm after he arrives here. I would go on to the next one, and he would have more land and cattle than he could make use of to advantage. It is a laughable idea, but is nevertheless true. Men would tell me they were young and beginning the world, and would say, we have no children, but our prospects are good, and we think we shall have a family of children, and if we do, we want to give them 80 acres of land each. We have no surplus property. How many cattle have you? So many. How many horses, etc.? So many, but I have made provisions for all these, and I have use for everything I have got. Some were disposed to do right with their surplus property, and once in a while you would find a man who had a cow which he considered surplus, but generally she was of the class that would kick a person's hat off, or eyes out, or the wolves had eaten off her teats. You would once in a while find a man who had a horse that he considered surplus, but at the same time he had the ringbone, was broken-winded, spavined in both legs, had the pole evil at one end of the neck and a fistula at the other, and both knees sprung. This is the description of surplus property that some would offer to the Lord. J.D. 2:307. In Missouri, the commanding general, John W. Clark, told the Mormons that if they would renounce their religion, they could remain on the land. Also an edict of banishment was issued by the governor of the state, Lilburn Boggs, and was executed by Clark with an army to carry it out. The Lord said, Zion cannot be built up unless it is by the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom, otherwise I cannot receive her unto myself. And nay, people must needs be chastened until they learn obedience, if it needs be, by the things which they suffer. D&C 105:5-6. The saints suffered severely more perhaps than they should have, but nevertheless they would not yield to the laws of God. The Lord also said, Behold, I say unto you, there were jarrings, and contentions, and envyings, and strifes, and lustful and covetous desires among them, therefore by these things they polluted their inheritances. D&C 101:6. Not only did the saints begin to suffer from their own weaknesses, but they had trouble with those who apostatized. Parley Pratt said, In all the general persecutions, from that time to the present, I do not recollect of a single instance, that the general storm was not brought about by men from among ourselves, professing the name, membership and priesthood of the Latter-day Saints, traitors to the cause that they profess to believe. This was the direct means of the suffering and the breaking up of the community in Kirtland, of the breaking up of the community in, and the expulsion of them from Missouri. JD 1:85. Persecutions continued in Far West, and the Mormons were driven out again, leaving nearly $500,000 in property and goods. In January of 1839, the Saints left for Illinois to make another settlement. During the next 5 years, Nauvoo grew and developed into one of the largest and most important cities in Illinois. About 25,000 Mormons settled this swampy land to make it almost a self-sustaining community. Work on a temple began, along with the construction of a church building, a hotel, and the Nauvoo House. In Nauvoo the church began the organization of the Nauvoo Agricultural and Manufacturing Society, a joint stock system of ownership. In 2 years the city had a tool factory, foundry, flour mill, sawmills, and a steamboat. Church members were required to individually contribute 1/10 of their possessions and 1/10 of their annual increase. Those who had little or no money were required to donate 1 day in 10 for the church, called labor tithing. In January 1840, during the time that the Saints were settling Nauvoo, Patriarch John Smith wrote from the Iowa Territory to his son, George A. Smith. We, the Saints in Iowa Territory, have voted to organize after the order of the law of consecration as given in the Doctrine and Covenants of the Church, but there are some objections to that order at Nauvoo. I have debated in public with some of their champions, and they acknowledge the justice of our proceedings, yet we learn they are not all satisfied. What will be the event I know not, but one thing is evident. His Satanic Majesty has been trotting across the river back and forth all winter to prevent the saints from keeping the law of the Lord, and many are led by that spirit, and seem to love to have it so. Doctrines of the Kingdom, Hiram Andrus, page 258. The disorganization and conflict among the saints, apostates and half-apostates, were a constant problem for the Nauvoo settlement. Under such stress, and a realization that they would be there only temporarily, Joseph said that Nauvoo would not be able to live the united order. The following statement is taken from the minutes of the Iowa High Council. The law of consecration could not be kept here, Nauvoo, and that it was the will of the Lord that we should desist from trying to keep it, and if persisted in, it would produce a perfect defeat of its object, and that he assumed the whole responsibility of not keeping it until proposed by himself. CDHC 4:93-94. This reprieve was short-lived, however, for in January 1847, the Lord told Brigham Young in Iowa to organize the saints into companies with the covenant, and promise to keep all the commandments and statutes of the Lord, and that each company bear an equal proportion, according to the dividend of all their property. D&C 136:8. However, many years later some of the apostles and saints thought that the law of united order had again been suspended, replaced or revoked. Orson Pratt also held to the idea that the Lord had revoked it in ancient times, and he had done so in our day. JD 16:5. However, when he finished his sermon, Brigham Young arose and said that the Lord Almighty has not the least objection in the world to our entering into the order of Enoch. I will stand between the people and all harm in this. JD 16:8. The Lord never prevented any man from living the gospel when he was worthy. How similar the law of united order is to the law of plural marriage. Some of Joseph's high council, several apostles and the majority of the saints, could not accept either of these doctrines. Both are laws which only a few are worthy and willing to obey. Because the saints failed to keep the commandments of the Lord, they were forced more than once to leave their homes, their lands and their temples. Now they had to leave the United States to wander in the desert wilderness to try again to live the gospel the way the Lord had revealed it.